Hey everybody, this is Dawn Duncan, the Grant Geek Diva, and I just wanted to hop on and talk a little bit about immigration. As I think I had mentioned in a previous video, I wanted to start doing some videos about data, really talking about data, particularly related to kind of governance. I like to talk about governance and politics being very different things, with the caveat that, of course, politics is very important and a big part of our uh, system of how we do things in the United States. But governance is also important and it's very different. So, being a grant writer who spent a lot of the years of my life helping nonprofit organizations, small businesses, etc., access government grant funding, I've had to learn how government organizations and agencies work and kind of how governance works. So, and I also, in full disclosure, I have a small nonprofit myself that does fiscal sponsorship for different nonprofits, including one that is focused highly on civic engagement, particularly voter registration and stuff like that. So, anyway, so my Grant Geek Diva channel is typically more focused on like grant related things, but especially during this crucial time that we're in, I feel like it's important to also talk about these other issues. So I also have a blog, which I will share in the description on this video of how to access that as well, where I've been writing about some of these issues. But I thought for this video, I would let me share my screen. Okay. And show this. This is actually the website of Pew, the Pew Research Center, a very well-known nonpartisan institute that um, that does research on various kinds of issues, and immigration is one of them. So I thought I'd just spend a little time going through some of this information, which tells us some about what's going on in the world, in the United States, I should say, in relation to immigration. So, okay, so let's see the Pew, and here I'll just give a little background about the Pew Research Center regularly publishes research on U.S. immigrants. And then this part of their website has information on answers to some key questions about the U.S. immigrant population. And for broad, super broad context, you can see here the United States has long had more immigrants than any other country. In fact, the U.S. is home to 1/5 of the world's international migrants. These immigrants have come from just about every country in the world. Okay. So, first of all, to give kind of an overall context, let's look at how many people in the U.S. are immigrants. The U.S. foreign-born population reached a record 46.1 million in 2022. And again, historically broad context, growth accelerated after Congress made U.S. immigration laws more permissive in 1965. In 1970, the number of immigrants living in the U.S. was less than a quarter of what it is today. And immigrants today account for 13.8% of the U.S. population, a threefold increase approximately from 4.7% in 1970. But it also says, look at this very broader context, the immigrant share of the population today remains below the record, which was 14.8% in 1890. Okay, and let's look at this. Immigrant share of the U.S. population from 1850 to 2022. So you can see here in 1850, 14.8% in 1890, 9.7% in 1850. So there was a large peak between 1850 and 1890. Then you can see this large growth from 1970, when it was 4.7%, up to now, 13.8%. And about half of all immigrants from 1965 to 2022 are from Latin America. Okay, let's look at some statistics about where are U.S. immigrants from. Okay, Mexico is the top country of birth for U.S. immigrants. In 2022, roughly 10.6 million immigrants in the U.S. were born there. Mexico, that made up 23% of all U.S. immigrants. The next largest origin of groups was from India, 6%, China, 5%, the Philippines, 4%, and El Salvador, 3%. So this gives you a sense that Mexico is by far the highest, followed by India and then China. Okay. How have immigrants' origin countries changed in recent decades? Before 1965, U.S. immigration law favored immigrants from Northern and Western Europe and mostly barred immigration from Asia. The 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act opened up immigration from Asia and Latin America. The Immigration Act of 1990 further increased legal immigration and allowed immigrants from more countries to enter the United States legally. Since 1965, about 72 million immigrants have come to the United States from different and more countries than their predecessors. Interesting. From 1840 to 1889, about 90% of U.S. immigrants came from Europe, 70% from Germany, Ireland, and the United Kingdom. Almost 90% of the immigrants who arrived from 1890 to 1919 came from Europe, 60% from Italy, Austria-Hungary, and Russia, Poland. Since 1965, about half of U.S. immigrants have come from Latin America, with about a quarter from Mexico alone. Interesting. The newest wave of immigrants has dramatically changed states' immigrant populations. In 1980, that's interesting. I didn't know this. In 1980, German immigrants were the largest group in 19 states. Canadian immigrants were the largest in 11 states, and Mexicans were the largest in 10 states. By 2000, Mexicans were the largest group in 31 states. Today, Mexico remains the largest origin country for U.S. immigrants, although immigration from Mexico has slowed since 2007. Interesting. Okay, recent immigrants. Here we go. In 2022, Mexico was the top country of birth for immigrants who arrived in the last year with about 150,000 people. India had about 145,000, and China had about 90,000. Those were the next largest sources of immigrants. Countries including Venezuela, Cuba, Brazil, and Canada each had about 50 to 60,000 new immigrant arrivals. So that gives you the picture that in 2022, where the immigrants were coming from. So 150,000 from Mexico, 145,000 from India, 90,000 from China. Interesting. The main sources of immigrants have shifted twice in the 21st century, so since 2000. The first was caused by the Great Recession, 2007 to 2009. So up until 2007, from 2000 to 2007, there were more Hispanics than Asians arriving in the U.S. each year, but it's shifted from 2009 to 2018. The opposite was true. Since 2019, immigration from Latin America has reversed that pattern again, so more Hispanics than Asians have come each year. So I think this is important context just to show data, because oftentimes we get told this information that's kind of like focused on maybe one group of people, or that, that it's just this terrible kind of thing with the border and things. But I want people to think about this in this broader context, so that you can see how things do change. And they often change based on different things going on around the world, right? So, like, for example, until between 2000 and 2007, there were more Hispanics than Asians coming into the US. But from 2009 to 2018, regardless of what stories are told on the news or what propaganda shared or what people are being, like criticized, or there's racism against them or whatever, the reality is from 2009 to 2018, more Asians than Hispanics arrived in the country. So, there you go. And since 2019, immigration from Latin America, much of it unauthorized, has reversed the pattern again. And people can there's lots of information, articles about different global trends that have made that happen as well, like things going on in different countries that have made some people decide that they wanted to come to the US. That's a different issue. I'm just talking about the data here, but this is just to kind of give you an idea. So, okay, let's see here. What is the legal status of immigrants in the US? Contrary to what we often hear on the news as well, most immigrants, 77%, are in the country legally. As of 2022, 49% of immigrants were naturalized U.S. citizens. 24% were lawful permanent residents, 4% were legal temporary residents, and 23% were unauthorized immigrants. So keep in mind, that's as of 2022. So that's that point in time. Between 1990 and 2007, the unauthorized immigrant population more than tripled in size, from 3.5 million to a record high of 12.2 million. Then from there, the number declined to about 10.2 million in 2019. So keep in mind, in 2007 was the highest number, 12.2 million. And then in 2019, it had declined to 10.2 million. So during that period of time, so I'm thinking about 2007, at that time we had, that would have been when the second George Bush was president in 2007. Okay, so yeah, that was the highest. And then when did his last year was 2008, right? Yes, because Obama was 2009 through 2016. Okay, interesting. So you can see that, and it continued to decline from 2007 to 2019, it went down all the time, that whole time. And then in 2022, the number showed sustained growth for the first time since 2007 to 11.0 million. So it appears that, let's see, if it was 10.2 million in 2019, in 2022, it went up 10.2, not quite a million. So 10.2 to 11.0, about 800,000 in 22. Okay, in 2022. And as of 2022, about 4 million unauthorized immigrants in the US are Mexican. This is the largest number of any origin country, representing more than 1/3 of all unauthorized immigrants. However, the Mexican unauthorized immigrant population is down from a peak of almost 7 million in 2007, when Mexicans accounted for 57% of all unauthorized immigrants. So if they're saying there's about 11 million total unauthorized immigrants in the US, 4 million of those are Mexican. So that's actually substantially less than half, a little over a third. 4 times 3 is 12. Yes. So if there's about 4 million and there's 11 million total, up a little over 1/3 are Mexican. And as it says here, the Mexican, Okay. Oh, the drop in the number of unauthorized immigrants from Mexico has been partly offset by growth from other parts of the world, especially Asia and other parts of Latin America. The 2022 estimates of the unauthorized immigrant population are our latest comprehensive estimates. And that's just because this Pew group has to take they create their reports from the data that actually comes from the actual government agencies, such as Homeland Security, which is where you get most of the immigration data. And so they have a link here for other partial data sources, suggest continued growth in 2023 and 2024. Okay, then I'm just going to go a little bit over and then in this video, and I'll probably do another one with a little more, on the same topic, but this was more to help just give people a kind of a broad context. So here, we'll do this quick, who are unauthorized immigrants, and then I think we'll stop there for today. Okay, virtually all unauthorized immigrants living in the U.S. either entered the country without legal permission or they arrived on a non-permanent visa and stayed after it expired. Okay, then we also have that. So it's not as simple as a lot of people, I think, try to be like, oh, it's illegal, period, end of story. But it's not really that simple because there's different ways that people come into the country and then, yeah, either overstay their visa or something like that. So again, this is just for the purpose of providing the data and the context to describe how this stuff works. So I think this is important to share quickly. Okay. In 2022, about 3 million unauthorized immigrants had temporary legal protection from deportation. These immigrants fall into several groups. One is temporary protected status. There's about 650,000 immigrants that have temporary protective status, or TPS. That's offered to individuals who cannot safely return to their home country because of things like civil unrest, violence, natural disaster, or other extraordinary and temporary conditions. There's also due to Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA, which most people have probably heard of the term DACA. Almost 600,000 immigrants are beneficiaries of DACA. This allows individuals brought to the U.S. as children before 2007 to remain in the U.S. And this is mostly because if the children have been here since 2007, they haven't lived anywhere else. So they don't actually know any other place to live or culture or anything like that. Okay, the third group is asylum applicants. About 1.6 million immigrants have pending applications for asylum in the U.S. as of mid-2022 because of dangers faced in their home country. These immigrants can stay in the U.S. legally while they wait for a decision on their case. And then there's just broadly some other protections, which cover several 100,000. Like special visas to become lawful immigrants. And these are visas offered to groups such as victims of trafficking and certain other like victims of criminal activities. So this gives you, again, kind of an overall sense, right, of this 3 million. This is a group of 3 million unauthorized immigrants, but who have these temporary legal protections. So they wouldn't be folks that would be that even though they're not, quote, here legally, they do have some kind of protections that help them out. Okay, in addition, about 500,000 immigrants arrived in the U.S. by the end of 2023 under programs created for Ukrainians. That would make sense because of the war going on in Ukraine, and people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, CHNV parole. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Sure, it's something to do with the stuff that had been going on in Venezuela for the past several years. These immigrants mainly arrived too late to be counted in the 2022 estimates, but may be included in future estimates. So, okay, well, that was just to give you kind of a quick overview of immigration in the United States and kind of the overall status of it at the moment. And I'm going to continue doing videos on kind of different issues around governance and data. And I consider this information also related to governance because this data is taken from data sources of the US government, primarily Homeland Security, which actually tracks all of these numbers. So it gives us a very specific sense of the actual numbers of people who are immigrants and the different categories into which they fall. So this is just, again, a quick overview of it. And I love how the Pew Research Institute provides even this historical context. So, because, the United States is a country that is everybody's an immigrant, right? Unless you were Native American. So, um, it's an interesting, interesting overview. And I like how this gives us an overview and we're able to dig a little bit into more detail data. And again, I'll do another video soon. Hope everybody has a great day. Thank you for watching. This is the Grant Geek Diva. And as I always say, you don't have to get it perfect, but you do have to get it rolling. Have a great day. Bye-bye.